So welcome and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am Sophia Nort. I work in the Washington, D.C. office of the IAP Secretariat. So IAP, or the InterAcademy Partnership, is a global network of about 150 academies of science, engineering, and medicine. We produce our own evidence-based statements and reports that look at major priorities and provide independent advice to national organizations. So in 2022, IAP published the report Combating Predatory Academic Journals and Conferences, which set out to improve the understanding of what constitutes predatory practices, gauge their prevalence and impact, identify the root causes, and review efforts to address them. In this report, they found that predatory practices are pervasive and can pose a serious threat to the global research ecosystem. There were several recommendations from this report, and these recommendations were tailored to target several diverse stakeholder groups that were identified and to provide actionable goals for these stakeholder groups. In order to continue the fight against predatory publishing practices, buy-in is needed and continues to be needed from all stakeholders. The summary and the report have been translated into several languages. It is available on our website, and I will put the link into the chat shortly. Since the release of this report, work has continued to be done on this topic. In 2023, IAP issued a small grant. This was given to a consortium of 3 academies: the Benin Young Academy of Science, the Czech Academy of Sciences, and the Indian National Young Academy of Science. This consortium, which is called the Roadmap to Improve Ethics in Science and Curb Predatory Publishing Consortium, or RESCUE, consisted of individual proposals that were focusing on 3 distinct regions and stakeholder groups. For example, the Czech Republic and librarians. This consortium met monthly to discuss progress, exchange knowledge, and devise global best practices. So our speakers today are the members of the consortium, the project leads, who have been working on this for the past year. They are Dr. Kutu Mola, who is from the Indian National Young Academy of Science, and he will discuss higher education institutes in India. Dr. Boris Legba, who is speaking in place of the project lead from Benin, Dr. Victorian Dugden. He's from the Benin Young Academy of Science and will talk about collaboration with policymakers and university students in Benin. And then Teresa Simova, who is with the Czech Academy of Science and will talk about we'll discuss engagement with librarians in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. More information can be found about our speakers on the IAP website, which I will also put a link to in the chat shortly. All right, so I will hand it over to our first speaker, Kutu, and we will have time for discussion after the presentations. So please put any questions in the chat at any time, and we will discuss them in the discussion. All right, go ahead, Kutu.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophia, for a nice introduction of this webinar and our speakers for today. So a warm welcome to all of you to this IAP webinar, and based on your time zone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. So I'll be discussing about the idea behind this consortium RESCUE and the engagement of what we have done from the part of Indian National Young Academy of Science with the higher education institutes in India. So, you know, that I guess the participant of this webinar has pretty good knowledge about the kind of damages that causes these kind of predatory practices, including the predatory publishing practices. So I just want to highlight a few of them, although all of you know, but I want to emphasize on them. For example, it leads to inefficient allocation of resources. And it also significantly, impact on the erosion of trust in science and public trust in science, and it can also misguide the policy and decision making. And bad research and fake information could be freely accessible to the public because of this predatory practices. Now, if you see the growth of predatory articles in predatory journals, if you see this is a kind of cancer cells grows without any control. So it jumped over 8 times from 2010 to 2015. It's around 420,000 predatory articles published in 2014, but I do not have a comprehensive data for the later part, like 2024 or 2023. But if you see the number of predatory journals, that also exponentially have grown from 2014 to 2021. It has almost become doubled in these 7 years. And the more important and crucial issue that I want to highlight here is that hundreds of these predatory journals are indexed on leading scholarly databases, for example, Scopus and Web of Science, and that's the real threat that we are experiencing today. And this analysis published in Nature highlights that how poor quality science is infiltrating our trusted academic literature. Now, if you see the situation, the vulnerable group of researchers that fall easily as a prey to this predatory houses are mostly from the middle-income countries, from Asia, North Africa, Arab countries, and oil-rich countries. So the problem is more prominent in those regions of the world. So with this background, this is a real problem, a real threat that today's academia is experiencing. So with a common goal to curb predatory publishing and improve the ethics in science, IAP, the InterAcademy Partnership based in Washington, D.C. has generously supported to develop a consortium among the young academies of India, Bangladesh, Benin, and Czech Republic. And this, as Sophia already mentioned, is RESCUE, which is an abbreviated form of roadmap to improve ethics in science and curb predatory publishing. So if you see the consortium team, the team members are from Indian National Young Academy of Sciences, Indian National Science Academy, and also DST Center for Policy Research, and National Young Academy of Bangladesh, and also Benin Young Academy of Sciences and Czech Sciences. You would also heard from the representative of Benin and Czech later of this presentation. So I would spend one single slide for each of these two partners from Benin and Czech. The Czech Academy of Sciences and Slovak, led by Teresa Sinova, has done wonderful work on this aspect. They mainly focused on empowering librarians and trainers, from these two countries about these predatory practices, and they have developed several teaching modules ready to go for the trainers and librarians who want to teach and make awareness program. And they also developed several the website that has a lot of practical exercises and other tools that are available for the students also. So you'd listen from Teresa later of this webinar, and Victoria is the lead from Benin Young Academy of Sciences. They've also done wonderfully well, engaging with the Education Institute in Benin and policymakers in Benin, and they've done national tour on predatory journals and conferences in Benin. So you'd get a detailed activities from a Benin representative today, later part of it. Now, coming to the Indian scenario, if you see India's contributions, the latest 2024 from the National Science Fund, USA. So India is the third most, topmost contributor of scientific articles, number of articles published. And if you see the India's growth in research publication trend from 2000 to 2020, and compared to 2010, in 2020, it published almost more than 2.5 tons. So the growth is really exponential, and billions of researchers in India, and impact is really huge. On the flip side, if you see the list of countries who has contributed, highest number of publications in predatory journals, you see here the India's name comes at the top. out the least. So this is really a threatening issue for the Indian academia. If you see another statistics from the same publication that I'm referring to, most of the predatory journals or publishers are located in India. So it is both producer and consumer from the same part of the world that are highly impacted. So the impact is not, as I highlighted during my initial slides, the impact is not only those I have highlighted, but it is kind of up to us who has a lot of tentacles and has long reaching impact in all of academia and all the stakeholders. For example, let me highlight one thing here. National Institute ranking framework in IRF established by Indian government in 2015, and that rank more than 10,000 institutions in India. In order to boost the ranking, to go top of the ranking list, these predatory publications offer citation booster services sometimes, and which in turn also influence the ranking. And as a result, at the end user of this ranking is the students who are the primary consumers of this rankings, and they are deceived by this ranking, biased on the citation boosting received from the predatory publications. So Indian National Young Academy of Sciences is the only recognized Young Academy of Sciences in India, and that was established in 2014 under the head of Indian National Science Academy. And we're celebrating 10 years, we're pretty young, and 10 years of our journey this year. So INEAS is addressing a two-way problem regarding this issue. One is to make awareness at researchers level, and another is also to engage with policymakers to influence policy decision. So if you see, INEAS is working quite some times in this area, and we publish, white papers, also some articles to influence policy decision. So we have conducted several online meetings, in group meetings, to discuss some alternative arena of publishing movements other than the normal, journal publications. For example, meta-research, open review, and also peer-reviewed preprints as a means to further, combat predatory publishing in India. And there is a University Grant Commission in India who actually oversee the whole university system in India. They are also very proactive in this area to raise awareness. And they have made a consortium for academic research and ethics called CARE. And UGC CARE has also prepared a list of quality journals in that, so that they maintain and update it on regular basis. So we engaged with the member of the Empower Committee of UGC CARE, and also one member from Bangladesh, and we organized joint meeting to know the perspective of what the recent measures CARE is taking. And then we organized also several in-person meeting. This is a few snapshot from this National Vice Research Institute, which was attended by more than 70 participants, and most of them are PhD and MSc students and young researchers. We made awareness on publication conferences, take out 3 topics, and this is also another significant seminar that we conducted in person, focusing on the PhD coursework students. So every university in India, they do all the PhD enrolled students must do this course, which extends from 6 months to 1 year. So we went there to do this seminar for targeting those PhD students. And this is a snapshot of our total 82 students attended, and we also highlighted several predatory academic malpractices and what are the way forward to avoid those malpractices. And it is a recent webinar also we organized at Czech University, Bangladesh, where mostly focused on the researchers from the Dhaka University. Is a closed webinar focused on the participants from Dhaka University. So these are all things that we have conducted, and to a different note, we also did panel discussion because so awareness is a part. Another thing is that we also have to engage with other stakeholders. For example, the major publishers in the world like Elsevier, Spring and Nature, American Chemical Society. So we conducted a panel discussion to move their perspective. Several key takeaways came from those perspectives, from those panel discussions. For example, updating policy and practices to counter the publisher-perish culture. The publisher-perish culture also play an important role in falling prey to the policies. And there are other factors, for example, to educate researchers in research ethics. It's not about publishing anything or everything. It's simply to revisit why research is being done, and collaboration need also was highlighted. And those publishing houses also have developed several free resources that are available online in and that can be freely accessed by the researchers and researchers. So we have also recently discussed a focused panel discussion in a session, in a symposium recently, which is attended by 80 young researchers. So, total 9 panelists were there, and we are now preparing a white paper out of the discussion from the panelists that mostly, covered the predatory practice. Now, what are the resources? Because recently, I have not included this slide earlier, but last minute I included this slide as this webinar also is being attended by several participants who also want to know the resources. So these are the resources that we normally highlighted in our awareness program. For example, there are several lists available in the website that you can check whether the validity of the journal that you are considering to submit. So these are the list, and also there is a easy to use tool like Team Check, Submit, or other tools that we highlighted during our awareness program, including the StopPredatoryPractice.com, which has been developed by Teresa's group from Czech Republic, from this consortium. And so, what lessons we learned through this last year? So, continued awareness is needed. It's not a it's a goal-oriented. Okay, up to this we are done. Not like that. When you talk to young researchers in several universities, especially young faculty, PhD and MSc scholars, the majority of them are unaware that predatory practices exist and that there are fake journals. They do not know. For example, just few days ago, one nursing scholars sent me 5 lists of journals to check whether they're okay or not to submit, and then I have checked all of them. So if you search in Google, and most populated would be those predatory journals. If you search journals for any subject, so that's the real scenario. And updating policy and practices to counter publisher-perish cultures, and most of our participants highlighted this one. And our many countries' research evaluation systems sometimes prioritize quantity over quality. That's another problem. And there is a pressing need of easy-to-use tool to check the journal's credibility. Although there are tools that I already mentioned in my earlier slides, but there are some tools are difficult to use, but some tools are easy to use, but more tools are needed to. And obviously, there are tools to check the journal's credibility. Many people do not know. So that's why awareness is a continuous process that needs to be done. And thank you all for attending this webinar. Huge thanks to IAP for funding this consortium. And INEAS, being the sole young academy in a country like India, has a huge responsibility in this area to reach out to large number of Indian stakeholders. And it is not an easy job, and it needs collective effort. So INEAS is relatively new academy, and we are growing and learning, and support from IAP is needed in the future also to continue our efforts. Thank you all, and back to Sophia.
Thank you, Kutu. And yes, I think you've highlighted a lot of important aspects, especially the importance to raise awareness for university students, but also work with policymakers. I will now hand it over to Boris to talk about the efforts from the Benin Young Academy. I also did not mention earlier, but this is recorded and will be available for the public on the IAP website within the following weeks. Okay. Boris,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. So you should see my screen now.
Yes.
So hello everyone, I am Boris Legba from University of Abu in Benin. We will talk about collaboration between higher education institution and policymaker in Benin during this project. Dr. Victorien Douillon was supposed to do this presentation. He is the current president of Benin Young Academy of Sciences, and he is member of this consortium, but he had a flight and it was a misunderstanding for the time. It is why I will present instead of him. So we will talk about 4 aspects. Firstly, the need of this project in Benin, why it was essential. After that, I will present the key activity and achievements in Benin. And then we will discuss the synergy between higher education institution and policymaker during this project. And we'll complete with some lessons learned and also future plan. So you know that predatory journal is a very, very big problem in all the world, in Africa, but also especially in Benin. So they target mainly early career researchers, but also inexperienced scholars who don't have enough information about predatory journal. And what are the situation in Benin? So in Benin, there is a lot of researchers. They don't have enough information about predatory journal and predatory conference. I can say that it is the last 3 years or the last 4 years, we start talking about predatory journal and conference in Benin, because there is not enough awareness activity about that. And this lack of awareness has led to increase vulnerability of researchers about predatory journal and conference. There is some initiative, there was some initiative about predatory journal, especially Benin Academy of Sciences organized some training about that. There is also some university, the stats organize some short training for researchers, for teachers about predatory journal, but we did not have a national initiative targeting researchers with the aim to improve the knowledge about predatory journal and conference in Benin. So it was necessary to implement initiatives like that. Secondly, last years in Benin, we established the delegation for ethics and compliance under the presidents of Benin. And with this committee, they have some guidelines about how to improve ethics in higher education and academia, but they don't have specific initiative about predatory journal and conference. So with this project, our aim was to address this issue by promoting ethical standards in research and help to safeguard the integrity of academic work. So we want to elevate the standard of scientific research at Beninese University and National Research Institute. So our specific objective was to improve the knowledge about predatory journal and conference in Benin, also strengthen the policy and regulation to combat predatory journal and conference. And at the end, we want to establish some sustainable strategy for disseminating the project results and best practice for scientific publication within Beninese scientific community. So it was our objective at the beginning of the project. So to achieve the objective, we organized some key activity in Benin. I will present them quickly. The first initiative was the National Forum on Predatory Journal and Conference in Benin. I can say that it was the first time we organized something like that in Benin. It was in December. And on 3 days, we bring together some stakeholders, but also experts from academia and from policy, especially member of Academy of Sciences, but also rector and dean of some faculty and university. And at key outcome, it was an opportunity to discuss about the situation of predatory journal and conference in Benin. And it was more than 60 participants. So after this activity, we organized what we call National Tour on Predatory Journal and Conference in Benin. It was a dissemination workshop of a report of a study combating predatory academic journal and conference organized by InterAcademy Academy. So our aim was to disseminate the result of this workshop in all the universities in Benin. So we were in University of Benin, National University of Agriculture, UNSTEAM, but also University of Parakou. So there are the 4 main public universities in Benin. So as key outcome, I can say that 290 researchers, teachers, and students from the 4 public universities in Benin have been impacted. So they know more about what is predatory journal and conference. They know more about the study performed by InterAcademy Academic about predatory journal, but also the key recommendation from this study. After that, this year we organize 2 capacity building workshops because it is good to organize dissemination activity, but we think that to have a great impact, it was necessary to train the researchers. So in 3 days, we organize practical capacity building with for students, PhD students, researchers, and teachers from the university. We have 2 workshops, one in the south of Benin and the second in the north of Benin. So for this workshop, we talk about predatory journal. We try some tools provided by the study of InterAcademy Academic to check how they can use this tool to choose a good journal and to avoid predatory journal. So it was very interesting. And after that, we think that it is good to train researchers, but if you have a good training and we don't have an improvement at policy level, it will be very, very difficult to have a great fight against predatory journal. It is why in this project, we plan a policy workshop. The policy workshop was designed to define criteria and strategy for scientific excellence in Benin. And it was very interesting because we bring together higher education leaders in Benin, but also some member of policymakers. And together we define some criteria for scientific excellence in Benin, but also some strategy to combat predatory journal and conference. We decide about also some strategy to monitor research publication in Benin and to have a very good ethical practice. And during this workshop, we have some key recommendations, especially establishment of a national publication monitoring system in Benin, creating a blacklist and a whitelist of journals at national level, regular training and awareness of researchers, but also some penalty for publication in predatory journal. And we also recommend to create a committee for control and evaluation of publication in Benin. So it was a key recommendation for the policy workshop. And the last recommendation about the committee was very important because, we have 4 main universities, and it is good if we can have a committee in each university, and this committee can organize some activity against predatory journal and conference. It will help us to have more impact and local action in each university. It is why for the last activity, we established in each university. It was very interesting because we collaborate with the rector of each university and we established this community. It is the Benin Academy of Sciences who have the lead of this initiative, but the rector of each university was selected as the president of each committee. And we have some researchers from the university established for that. So what the committee are supposed to do? They are supposed to implement the key recommendation from the policy workshop and also to continue what we have started. And it will help to have a great impact. So what can we say about synergy between higher education institution and policymaker during the project? I can say that without this collaboration between policymaker and higher education institution, we cannot have the impact we get, because we try to establish a solid partnership between the university and also the policy maker. And at the beginning of the project, we got institutional approval from the Ministry of Higher Education in Benin, but also from National Academy of Sciences. So all the rectors of the Benin University of Benin, they agreed to participate to the project. So I think it was a very, very big and interesting beginning. Secondly, especially for the implementation of a project, planning the workshop, we try to work together. So with the representative of Ministry of Higher Education, representative of Benin Academy of Sciences, representative of the National Academy of Sciences, and from the rector of each university, we plan the workshop together. For example, during the national tour, it was the rector who organized the activity, who take to inform the researchers about the activity. So it was a joint initiative and very interesting as a result. And then the policy workshop, as I said, it was a policy workshop. So it was a great example of collaboration between higher education institution and policymaker, because representatives from Academy, Benin Academy of Sciences, Ministry of Higher Education, work together with the rector of each university to define some criteria to improve the quality of scientific publication practice in Benin. So this synergy also promotes institutional integrity and establish some clear guidelines to help universities to improve their practice about the fight against predatory publishing. And then with the creation of a committee in each university, it was a way to apply what we decide during the policy workshop. And for that also, the rector of each university was very active in the establishment of the committee. So what can we say as lesson learned from this initiative? Well, firstly, I can say that this project highlights the need to continue awareness about predatory journal and conference in Benin, especially for students and early career researchers. We need to continue this fight. And with our experience, we observe that cross-sector collaboration is very, very important. The collaboration between higher education institutions and policymakers show to us that if we want to have a great fight against predatory journal and conference, we need to make together all stakeholders from higher education, but also from policy. And for our future plan, we plan to continue the activity we have started. The community we established in university, and we'll continue the awareness raising, the capacity building activity, and we'll try to support them for that. We need also to continue the follow-up of the activity we have started, and as the end, it is planned to establish a bi-monthly webinar. So this webinar will start next month. So each 2 months, we will discuss about an important topic about integrity, about ethic aspect, about predatory journal. So it will help us to maintain the community well informed about predatory journal and conference and how to fight them. So at the end, we want to thank all the consortium of RESCUE for this project, and especially InterAcademy Partnership Academic for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris, and thank you for highlighting the importance of having a unified national effort and what buy-in from the policymakers can help achieve. We're going to go over to Teresa Samova from the Czech Republic now. Boris, could you stop sharing your screen? Thank you. And I will hand it over to Teresa.
Great, thank you very much. Can you just confirm that you can see the screen and the slides?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you and good afternoon or good morning. I'm very excited to be here with you on behalf of my colleagues from the Stop Predatory Practice initiatives. In this presentation, I would like to shed a light on the significant role that librarians in the Czech Republic and Slovakia play in combating predatory publishing practices, particularly targeting on the education of PhD candidates and early career researchers. Through this presentation, I will provide some insights into the unique challenges we face here locally in the Czech Republic, in the middle of Europe, and also how we implement some strategies to address this issue. Our focus has been mostly on the developing training modules to raise awareness and teach our academic community to detect and avoid unethical publishing traps. And I hope that by sharing our experience and the practical measures that we adopt here in Czechia and Slovakia, I hope to offer you some actionable strategies that you can adapt and apply in your regions to strengthen the integrity of academic publishing. So let's dive in. Let's start by some interesting numbers. As you can see on the slide, so the IAP report has brought to light a significant statistics that at least 24% of academic researchers globally have either published in predatory journals or participated in predatory conference. And this number underscores not only the prevalence of the predatory practices, but also the complexity of and the various factors that drive researchers towards these unethical practices, as you can see on the slide. Some researchers were unaware of predatory nature of conferences or journal, often deceived by appearance of legitimacy. Others felt compelled to publish in these venues in order to advance their careers, or they were influenced by some higher pressure of academic productivity. There were also those who chose this option for reasons of cost, convenience, or speed, which often aligned with these pressing demands of academia and the culture publish or perish, as my colleagues already mentioned. So as you can see, from a global perspective, predatory practices are a pressing topic. But it's essential to ask ourselves, how does this global perspective reflect on our local academic environments? For me, it's concretely in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And this question will lead us to our next section, to take a closer look on the local perspective. On this slide, I'm sharing with you a figure from colleagues from Macháček and Srholec who examined the share of predatory documents in Scopus in the OECD countries. And in this analysis, you can see that Slovakia emerged as the second most affected country, with nearly 2% of its scholarly outputs published in predatory journals. And the Czech Republic is not far behind. It's ranking 7th, with 1.3 of its publication in predatory venues. And this situation underscores our ongoing challenge that we face here in Czechia and in Slovakia. And this challenge has been also reflected at the level of work for all of us librarians. The increase in predatory practices, in number of publications in predatory journals and number of conferences that are predatory, directly affects our daily responsibilities and roles. As the fourth line in guiding researchers, we have observed a significant rise in numbers of queries and the need for consultation from researchers. And in some instances, we also needed to gain new competencies or knowledge and skills to effectively navigate and advise to our colleagues. Moreover, we often find ourselves constrained by some inefficient infrastructure support, such as outdated guidelines, a lack of comprehensive training modules, or some clear regulation that keep pace with the evolving standards of scholarly communication. And although there was several great resources available, and there are still several resources available, such as, for example, Think, Check, Submit that already my colleagues also mentioned, or the code principles and other great tools, my colleagues and I felt something was missing. Something was still missing, something more practical that could help us to raise awareness about the predatory practices in more easier way. And this gap led us to initiate the Stop Predatory Practice initiatives. And we are incredibly honored to receive a double support from the IAP, which allow us to enhance our efforts and reach a much broader audience. And we are also very happy that we can be part of the RESCUE Consortium this year. So let me share with you what all we done so far in this year and in the previous year as a part of Stop Predatory Practice. First of all, we map the needs of our academic community in Czech Republic. In 2022, we held a discussion with the key stakeholders from Czech Republic to address the challenges within our research environment, particularly connected with the predatory practices and the publish or perish culture. And during this discussion, several critical issues were highlighted. And one of the significant concerns raised was the gray area of predatory publishing, specifically targeting publishers and journals that are criticized for compromising publication quality and issues such as shortening the peer review or low quality of peer review, high number of special issues, or, for example, recruitment of underqualified reviewers. Moreover, concerns were also raised about the research assessment practices, reflecting a tendency among some researchers to prioritize the quantity over a quality of publication, to maximize research funding, to maximize their gain. And this is often driven by metrics that emphasize a journal impact factor or different citation metrics. And there was a strong call from the research community for a shift in how scientific outputs is evaluated, advocating for assessments that extend behind some classical bibliometric measures, indicators, to include a broader range of scientific contributions, like, for example, now the COARA is trying to do, or DORA, or other initiatives. And the most resonated issue in this discussion was how to identify predatory journal, or how to identify trusted journals. As you can see on the word cloud here, we asked the participants what they associate with the predatory practices. And you can see that they associate with this term things such as poor quality, science paratism, profit, science business, and so on. What is important to say that the bar chart on the left side illustrates that the primary concerns was the identification of trusted journals and publishers. It shows that defining the boundary between the predatory and trustworthy journals is a very complex and sophisticated issue, because, you know, the increasing sophistication and the diversity of predatory tactics create very multi-phase challenge, which is very difficult to define a clear line between what is predatory journal and what is a trustworthy journal. And for that reason, we were very happy then when we saw the IAP report, which offered this great spectrum of predatory behaviors for journal. This spectrum presents a broad set of dynamics predatory behaviors that range from a low-risk markers to a high-risk markers. And it's also highlighting the gray area of predatory publishing that was so many times mentioned by participants in our discussion. If we move forward, we also, in our recent workshop, we surveyed the librarians to understand how they perceive their role in preventing predatory practices. And the graph here on the slides present a clear visualization of the key areas where librarians feel that they are involved. As the leading role, librarians act primarily as a distributor of information about predatory practices, where education and communications are the key activities they're doing there. Following closely, libraries also serve as an analyst of the publication activities within the research performing organization. This, for example, involves monitoring and evaluating the publishing behavior of researchers and so on. Furthermore, libraries are also involved in creating strategic and conceptual documents at the RPO levels, which I'm very happy to see here. And you can see that quite a lot of people already is involved in creation of the conceptual documents at the RPO's level. And what I'm even more happy to see, and as we also saw on the example of Benin, that librarians are also sometimes creators of strategic and conceptual documents at the national level, which I think it's very crucial things that libraries play not only a role in the education and in communication, but also that they shaping the policies that guard us against the predatory practices. And the role of librarians go even more on. For example, the IAP report that I already mentioned here has provided several targeted recommendations, and one of the recommendations was also for libraries to strengthen their role in combating predatory practices through focused training and development. There was a part that recommended that there should be a comprehensive training for librarian staff to enhance their awareness and the ability to identify predatory journals, and also that libraries should offer professional training for doctoral students and early career researchers. So we have sort of a set of recommendations. However, the question still remains, how do we practically approach these recommendations? And this was our main motivation to focus this year, because we want to focus this year specifically on the librarians in the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and helping them in the endeavors to implement these crucial trainings as all these recommendations saying that librarians should do. So let's take a closer look on what we've done with our initiatives to help the local librarians. The central point of our efforts is our teaching module. This teaching module is designed to be all-encompassing resource for both new and also senior librarians, helping them to understand and combat predatory practices effectively. You can see it's divided into 3 parts. In the theoretical part, we laid down some groundwork by covering the basis of predatory journals, predatory publishing houses, and predatory conferences. And this first theoretical part equips participants with necessary knowledge to identify potential threats in academics publishing. To gain some practical knowledge, we also include a variety of interactive exercises you can see on the slide, where we're trying to move forward from the theoretical knowledge to practical examples. So, for example, we have exercise Publish or Perish, sort of a mafia game, which simulates the pressure of academic publishing and teaches a recognition of predatory practices in a mafia gamified format of games. There are also other practical exercises, like, for example, Traveling Without Predators, where participants must choose a conference and avoid choosing a predatory conference. Or we have a practical example of exercise Recognize a Predator, when we have two journals, which one of them is hijacked version and the second one is the original version of journals, and the participants must choose based on some set of guidance which of the journal is predatory and which one is not. To support the teaching and the librarians, we also have a very detailed guidelines offering some practical tips and how to teach and how to facilitate this teaching a little bit more better. Because we noticed during many sessions that we had with participants that there are some tips that we should share with the librarians to avoid some common mistakes. The teaching module, it's freely available under the Creative Commons license, which means that it allows you to adopt it any of parts of the teaching module. You can basically build it up as Lego. You can just use some parts of the module and build your teaching lessons as you need. The module is available in Czech and English, and you can check it on our website. The link is in the chat. I saw. Thank you for sharing. And if I will share with you some proactive steps that we did this year in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. So we organized several targeted workshops and webinars for PhD candidates and early researchers. These sessions were designed to educate them on the landscape of academic publishing, or empathizing how to choose a trustworthy open access journal and how to identify predatory journals and conferences. Additionally, we also conducted a couple of trainer sessions, specifically for librarians in the Slovakia and the Czech Republic. And these programs were crucial as they empower the librarians to serve not only as a sort of gatekeeper of information, but also to empower them as educators within our academic institutions. As a result of these focused educational efforts, we have successfully trained over 350 participants across both countries this year. In addition to our training and education efforts, raising awareness about predatory practice has been also a very major pillar of our initiatives. And our efforts has been recognized on the local and international level as well, as you can see on the slides. On the left, you can see, for example, my colleague Kristina Pavlova at one of the local librarian events, educating the audience about the risk and implication of publishing in questionable journals. And this kind of direct engagement helps us reach the academic community in more personal and more impactful way, because the people can directly ask us any questions they might dealing with at their institutions. And on the right side, you can see screenshots from 2 articles published in Nature and 1 article from the Czech local research newspaper. And these articles discuss how to spot predatory conference and what it is like to attend one. And our initiatives has been highlighted as a key resources in this discussion, helping to extend our reach to a global audience, which we are very grateful for. Our last activity is the creation of set of recommendation on training and support for PhD candidates and early career researchers. Please take into account that this, what you see on the slide, is a preliminary version of the recommendation, as this is still work in progress. It's under a review of the research community, and academic community in Czech Republic. But I just want to share with you a peek that you can see what we are working on right now. We aimed our recommendation at university management, libraries, academies of science, and policymakers, with a particular focus on the Czech Republic. The primary goal is to enhance awareness of unethical practices of predatory journals and predatory practices, and equip PhD candidates and ERCs with proper training to identify and avoid the use of predatory journals and predatory conferences. And while these recommendations are specifically tailored to a Czech Republic, I believe that they can be adapted to other countries with similar research, development, and innovation infrastructure and similar publishing environments. So institutions in different regions might choose to adopt the entire framework or just implement specific recommendations from this specification to suit their local academic context. And as you can see, amongst these recommendations, there is, for example, developing comprehensive education programs that are integrated directly into the curriculum of the PhD candidates, covering the full spectrum of publishing process, explaining the peer review process, and emphasizing not only the practical, but also practical skills in recognizing trustworthy journal. Then there is also a recommendation to improve awareness through campaigns, for example, leveraging seminars, workshops, and digital social media to educate about the risk and signs of predatory practices. We also recommend to advocate for a policy and institutional changes, because in Czech Republic there is very small number of organizations that has an institutional policy on predatory practices. So we recommend to update academics' evaluation criteria to focus more on the quality of research to focus more on the quality of research rather than on the quantity metrics, and revising policies to discourage engagement with predatory journals. We also focus on utilizing technology to identify predatory practices, because the rise of AI is also touching the issue of predatory practices. So we also recommend to develop tools that help researchers recognize unethical publishing patterns. Some of the other recommendations also focus on encouraging a research culture that prioritizes ethical practice over integrity and metrics, and also fostering collaborative efforts between academies and libraries, between the Czech Republic and, for example, Slovakia or other countries that have very similar research and development infrastructure. So this is the preliminary version of the recommendations. And we would be very happy that after we will publish them, so we will help you to share. We will be happy to share it with you, and we will be happy for your feedback as well. As I conclude with my speech, I would like to ask you to try our teaching module at your institutional, and help us to improve the teaching module as we have it right now. So please try it out and give us a feedback. We will be very happy to hear from you how you implement the teaching module at your institutions. And as we conclude, I would like to express my gratitude to those who made this work possible. First of all, I would like to thank to my colleagues, Kristina Pavlova and Kristina Zichova, for their hard work and dedication. I would like to express also my appreciation to our partners here in the RESCUE Consortium. Thank you for sharing the local challenges and inspirations that give us through this project. And finally, I would like to thank to InterAcademy Partnership for supporting our consortium. And I'm particularly grateful for Sofia and Rania for your great support during this last year. So thank you for that as well. And thank you all for attention, and I hope to engage with you in the discussion.
Thank you, Teresa. Sorry, forgot what I was going to say. When we talk about predatory publishing a lot, we focus understandably a lot on the researchers, so it is nice to see a spotlight on another stakeholder group, which is the librarians, and what work can be done there. So we're going to move to discussion now. So I'll ask all the panelists to please turn their cameras on so I can spotlight you. For our audience, please go ahead and put any questions in the chat. You can also use the raise hand function and we will call on you. But to start off, I do have a question. The 3 projects focused on the local academic practices and cultures. We talk a lot about, you know, the global research ecosystem and global research culture, and a lot of the elements are present throughout. For example, publish or perish, I think, is everywhere. But the regional academic cultures are extremely important and obviously play a huge factor in your universities. So how does an understanding of these regional publishing cultures impact the efforts to educate about predatory publishing as well as help combat them? And are there strategies that you developed for your region that could then be used for global best practices? Open to anyone.
Yeah. So okay, so let me come fast quickly. So yeah, so in our academic publishing practices, and also to see the evaluation criteria of young researchers for their career advancement, they count publication for quantity over quality. So that is a major driving force for many of the responded in one of our survey that we have conducted, that these quantity over quality actually one of the driving force of choosing so the predatory publishing houses to increase the number. So in our cases, the UGC, the University Grants Commission, when they published that care list to choose from the valid journals, they also recommended one thing, that for each and every PhD course, there should be a focused curriculum on these predatory practices and research ethics. And this is a great initiative that has been taken by UGC, and we in our academy, Indian National Academy of Sciences, we have tried ourselves to fit in that course curricula to to fit us to express and to make awareness of about these practices and how to avoid them, and tell them what are the best practices to avoid them and what are the resources available. So this is how we have done. So yeah, this is all about from India's side, and if Teresa has any comment to make.
In Czech Republic, there is also the pressure on publication on the high impact factor, and I don't see currently in the near future how this will change. But I see on the European level that there are initiatives that are trying to move forwards to more narrative research assessments, such as, for example, Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, CORA, or DORA, or San Francisco Declaration. And I see that these initiatives has impact already on the local levels. So I hope that in the future, initiatives like this will help us also to combat the predators, because then there will be not such a pressure on publishing the publications, but we will focus on more broader aspects of the research assessment.
Okay, thank you. in Benin, there is a special situation. Sometimes there is some researchers, they know about predatory journal. They have also some very good publication, but because they need to have some number of publication during the assessment of their research, they choose to publish some manuscript in predatory journal. Because before our initiative, sometimes they don't consider predatory journal. If you apply for a position, for example, they just check the number of publications. So as researchers, for example, you try to avoid predatory journal and you want to have very, very big, interesting publication, but you can see that some of your colleagues, they don't care about predatory journal. They can publish 2, 3, 4 manuscripts when you are rushing to publish one. And they can beat you if you apply for the same position. So I think it is something very bad. And with our initiative, it improves the situation according to what I think, because together we had the opportunity to discuss all the aspects, and the main solution for that is about policy level. If you know, for example, that you apply for a position and they see that in your publication you have at least one manuscript published in predatory journal, they can cancel your application based on that. So for us, when I see initiative in other countries and I compare to what we have done in Benin, I think that policy level is very important for the fight. It can help to start showing to the researcher that it is not very good, even for your career, even for your research to publish in predatory journal. So it is what I can say at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple questions in the chat, so I think answer those quickly before we go over to Angela, who has her hand raised. There's a question asking, can you confirm that all the journals and publishers on Beal's list are predatory? I am going to quickly jump in here and say, part of the IAP report was that, sorry, Boris, I'm going to mute you quickly. Part of the IAP report cautioned against using or the reliance on lists such as Beal's list because predatory journals are a changing landscape, and it doesn't necessarily fall into a binary of this is what makes it predatory and this is what makes it a quality journal. Instead, we suggested the spectrum approach, which Teresa, thank you for sharing the spectrum earlier. And there's one for journals and conferences, and it is available on our website, and I can reshare that link. It is looking at the spectrum to identify characteristics of a journal to determine if the journal falls more likely on the predatory side. There have also been instances of former very reputable journals becoming a little more predatory, and I'm not quite sure about the reverse of a predatory journal becoming more reputable. But would anyone else like to add anything on just the idea of lists in general and how can we identify a journal or a conference as predatory?
Maybe if I can add something. So this is some question that we are very often asked by our colleagues in Czech Republic. If we can just have a list of the predatory journals or the trustworthy journals, it doesn't matter. But the thing is that, as the spectrum, as Sophia also mentioned, is that there is a whole spectrum of the factors, and there is no clear line to say, okay, this is predator, this is not a predator. And for that reason, any list is not possible to do. So that's an issue that that we know that we need to approach it in a different way. It's not something that some list will solve out. So for that reason, for example, in our part, we're focusing on education instead of creation of lists or some databases of trustworthy journals. But I think that Sophia mentioned it all.
Can I quickly comment?
Of course, go ahead.
So I think the Bell's list is actually discontinued from 2017, so it's not getting updated. And obviously, as Sophia mentioned, there's a dynamic field. So one inputted journal could be, delisted, and one another journal which was in earlier cases was in predatory list, and they are now indexed in a trusted indexing website. So that is possible but here one thing is that I agree with both Terence and Sophia that there is no black and white criteria that you could detect that this is predatory and this is no channel. So list is not a good idea as an IAP standpoint, from IAP standpoint. And I guess one thing I want to mention and with that we need to develop individual skills to detect predatory behavior of the channels. And then there is no simple, straightforward one website can give you a comprehensive idea about any channel. So you have to develop the individual skill to identify predatory behavior from the policymakers. Thank you.
So I think I don't have anything to add. I will say the same thing. We can use the spectra to check the quality of a journal. You know, when there is a list of predatory journal, it is just a help because we can use them to have some information. But the main important thing is to develop the skills to know some characteristic of predatory journal and how to navigate with that. So spectra provided by InterAcademy Academy can be very helpful. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and invite Rosaline to unmute and ask your question. Rosaline, are you able to speak? Okay, it seems maybe not. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Angela and maybe, yes, Rosaline, are you able to go ahead? Oh, we're not receiving audio. Okay. Rosaline, if you want to go ahead and write your question in the chat. Angela, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me right? Okay, thank you. I'm going to say something as a comment because I have both experience as scientists in American soil, also European scientist. And also I'm editor to a large publishing house. So I know very well how does it work. So first thing, I believe, actually Boris just say very, very well about the practice of predatory journals and publishing on, on the quantity and not on quality. It's everywhere. And I can say that also I was amazed because I was expected to have some more data for Eastern European countries that I know very well. And this practice is very, very important there. And actually people are getting academic positions based on this practice. The problem is if you want to implement guidelines and have all these important measures implemented, teaching students, teaching scientists, PhD students, young scientists, and so on, you will not be able to do it because people do not want to have that. Why? Because they advanced on the base of this publishing matter, you know, on this category of publishing in predatory journals. And here there is another problem. There are journals, and I'm talking now about the open access journals. Many of these predatory journals are also open access. And the problem is that for publishing in this open access, you'll have poor peer review in general in the open access. I will not say there are not also trustful journals that are open access too, but most of them, and this is from my more than 10 years experience as editor, are working as a predatory journal in general. So you have degrees and you have to be careful because there are so many open access journals that use very similar practice like predatory journals. They can do, I mean, they're not all the time on the bills list. They are not all the time on this list of predatory journals, and it's the same for the conference. And people, they do not know that. And I can tell you, even in the United States, a lot of persons that are scientists, professors, associate professors, are not aware of that. The problem is that in Europe, as I said, there are so many practices in the Eastern European countries, but they will not be willing to implement these guidelines just because they have all this practice implemented in all the system. It means that if it's not taking a kind of, you know, the politics at the European level, at the whole European Union level, to probably be, you know, kind of, you have to do that. If not, you're not part of this, something like that. These guidelines cannot be implemented and we cannot do anything. And if you look to the OECD, and I think it was Teresa showed something at the beginning of her speech. There are not so many countries from the Eastern European Union. I know there are these kind of practices there, and you cannot have the idea what's going on because nobody checked them. But to advance in the academic universities, in the academic environment, it's all the time based on this kind of category of publishing. So I think we have to implement guidelines and discuss this at a larger level. European Union, Europe Science Societies, and European Academy of Science. Also probably in the United States, there are some couple of, you know, initiatives, but not so many actually. And I think we need to do that because otherwise we'll not be able to do that.
Okay, may I step in right away? Thank you, Angela, for the comment. What I would like to really focus here on is that you said that many of the open access journals are predatory, and I think that that is not so true because like many open access journals are very good, trustworthy journals, and it's important to distinguish between the predatory practices and the open access journals, because with open access and the idea behind the open access, there is nothing wrong. It's a good idea that we will open our research results to the wild public and that we will make them freely available to anyone. The predatory practice is sort of a different issue. It's a connected issue, but it's not the issue of open access. The open access is a good idea. Just sometimes there are some people who would like to take an advantage of this idea. And even though that some open access journals accept fees, article processing charges for the publication in them, it doesn't mean automatically that they are predatory journals. So I think that's very important to mention here because the open access, it's probably future of publishing, and we see it from many policies from United States, from White House, or for example from the European Commission, that open access is the way how the policymakers wish us to go on, and I believe that this is a good direction. So this is something that I wanted to highlight here. And you are right that in the Eastern Europe, the predatory journals and predatory conferences is big issues, and it's true that some people build their careers on publishing in such as venues, and it's very bad. And I'm afraid that for example, for me as a librarian, so our role is there to educate the future career, the early career researchers, that they will sort of change the new generation of the researchers and try to change the overall research environment in this matter.
Yeah, Teresa, I didn't say that all the open access journals are predatory. No, I said some of the open access journals may practice this kind of predatory practices. So it means that they will not tell you, well, we'll do like that. But in behind, I mean, somewhere there are some similar practice, not all, but very close to those of predatory journals. And I can tell you that as a scientist, I received, and not only me, there are a lot of other colleagues, we receive a lot of invitations from the predatory journals to submit papers, from open journals that are not probably considered also as predatory, but the way of inviting a scientist to submit a paper, the way of discussing, the way of they have their policies for publication and guidelines for the authors, they're pretty similar, I can tell you. And I have a lot of experience with that. So I didn't say that everything that is open access is bad, not at all. But you have to be careful as a scientist. And the target for these publications are the early research career scientists, or the PhD students or young scientists. They do not have enough experience and it's pretty easy to catch them actually, you know. So of course, a lot of open access journals, they make a lot of money. Let's try to understand that, okay? However, I have a lot of people telling me that normal people, they are not academics, they are not in the university. How many times they will open a publication, a scientific publication, to read it? No, there are also university people that are academic people that open a publication to read it. So there are some other aspects that I will not enter to discuss today, but there is an aspect actually that I wanted to point it out, that we have to be careful also with that.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Teresa. There's one question from Rania that I think if we could provide each a very quick response. And then I know there are a couple questions in the chat that have not been answered, but please feel free to email them to me and I will reach out to our panelists to see if they can potentially provide an answer. So Rania's question is, how is the use of AI changing the landscape of predatory journals? So, I mean, this could be a full webinar itself. So if everyone could please just provide a very quick question or answer. Thank you.
So, yeah, in a positive note, you know, the next generation, especially I would highlight the next generation large language models that has impressive capabilities in text generation and already being used to write paper scans, peer review reports, and also, you know, code for analysis. So these are being already done. So although these models can be used positively in a positive ways to, you know, to reduce the pressure of academia, but I believe that these large language models are likely to amplify the worst incentives of academia and greatly increasing the volume of scientific literature while diluting its quality. But there is no straightforward answer whether it would be in a positive way, it would impact in a positive way, or there is no answer to stop using in a negative way.
So I think there was a question about submitting one of the manuscript to a journal, but later realized that it was.
Sorry, Boris, not to cut you off, but that question was from, apologize if I mispronounced, Talini, and it is a question about submitting manuscripts and later realizing that it's a predatory journal, wanting to withdraw, but there's no contact information. How can they best go about withdrawing? So if you would like to answer that question, please go ahead.
Yes, I think the first thing is to stop listing the manuscript in your curriculum vitae. I think it is the first thing we can do. If you submit a manuscript or some manuscripts to a predatory journal that have been accepted, I think the first thing is to write to them to retract the manuscripts. But if you cannot do that, do not consider this manuscript as your publication. So stop listing that in your list of publication. That's the first thing. For second thing, sometimes it is true that they don't answer. If you pay and they publish a manuscript, they don't answer quickly, or they don't answer not at all. But sometimes there is a possibility, for example, if they have a website, or if there is an email from the editor or some editor, I think you can send email to them to retract. But I repeat, firstly, do not list this publication in your list of publication. Thank you.
So unfortunately, we are going to have to end there because we are just about at time. So I want to say thank you to our audience for such great questions, but also thank you so much to our panelists for presenting today and all the hard work that you have done over the past year, if not longer for some of you. As I mentioned, this webinar is recorded and it should be up on the IAP website shortly. Within a week or so. I believe I'm able to send a email to all who registered with the link, so I will do that once it is available. Additionally, this IAP has a monthly webinar series. We have another webinar in December, I believe December 10th, and that will focus on the UN Pact for the Future and other outcomes from the summit and the implications. So please register here. My colleague Moses put that link in the chat. As well, research ethics, research reform, predatory practices continues to be an area of concern for IAP and one that we hope to continue working on. There is a paper that was published by IAP, the International Science Council, and the Global Young Academy last year on research evaluation reform. I encourage everyone to go to check it out, and as well as sign up for our e-bulletin. And I will put those links in the chat. But thank you all so much for attending. We hope to see you at our next webinar, and thank you for our panelists.